And with the hammering of the Holy Starter, that marks the beginning of this, the 33rd episode of the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod. I'm your host, Gary, and you heard that voice. I have a guest with me, a international man of mystery.
Hello.
Goes by the name of Cujo. Cujo, how are you doing this evening?
Honestly, I feel like I've arrived since I'm on the Chaplain's Motor Pod. Thank you, Gary, for sharing this hospitality to this hidden base here.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to have you finally down in my pit, my mess, as it were. And you and I have been talking about this for over a year. Second guy I told about the podcast. And we've been going back and forth about, when are we going to do this? And then here it is, 33, the magical mysterious number.
Had to do it.
It's an honor to have you aboard. One of the reasons why you're on is because I love comic books, and I know you love comic books, and now the audience knows we love comic books, but you have actually made one a little while ago. What was the title of that dark-colored book?
I know you're being facetious right now because nobody forgets the Black Book once they lay their eyes on it. I did create a comic, not alone. I had an amazing colorist, Paul Lopser from South Africa, who definitely gave a lot of life to the pages I imagine we'll discuss shortly. But yeah, I think it was a couple years ago, and it's designed to grow, but I'm sure we can get to that.
Absolutely. Reread it. Yeah, see, even the trains enjoy it. Reread it today. It's been in my care. I still have the note that you included with it. So it's absolutely, it's a cherished item in my collection. On the reread, something that I had forgotten about was I love your pencils, how they have this very interesting vibe. They're hard, they're angular, geometrical, but it's not anatomically incorrect. It is a kind of your own spin of something that I would say is a cross between Michel Fiffe and Tom Scioli. One thing that impressed me, something that Tom Scioli does, is he makes every page a work, and I really got drawn into every page that you penciled and wrote and what Paul colored. It's just fabulous way of doing an amazing job of storytelling.
Checks in the mail. What's your Venmo? No, honestly, high praise. Huge fan of both Scioli and Fiffe. I would both define their line art as kind of open. It lets you into the page. A lot of people are ink heavy nowadays. It's emo. And then there's some that kind of like call back to more retro style like Scioli or Fiffe, which is more of like an artistic take. Where Fiffe breaks with more of like a design, I kind of like to keep it a little cartoonish so it keeps people off balance, but like deal with heavy subject matter, whether it be like people's emotions or just the situation at hand.
Right. I could definitely see that. It just really is it's like this book is a great love letter to G.I. Joe without being in word G.I. Joe. It's a desert mission, beginning with, a drop and going into, I don't really want to spill every single detail of this wonderful book, even though it probably should be back in print sometime soon.
Yes, preach. Yeah.
It's great to see how every page seems to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's something that's rarely seen in comic books these days. And that's why I definitely wanted to say about Tom Scioli, because his G.I. Joe and Transformers does exactly that too. Where you break from him is you do a little more of that traditional comic book style where every page does flow into the next. This is a book where each page I was drawn in, but I then wanted to get to the next page.
Well, since we're going on a little tangent about some of IDW's finest, and those guys do their own independent work as well. No, for to me, the only thing that keeps me at arm's length from Fife and Scholley's work is it does feel either more design oriented or more marketing oriented at times. I definitely use kind of a similar line art to convey um, confusion. Let me ask you the first question for the host. Uh, did this book come across to you as a mystery? What genre would you place it in? Obviously, there's action, but what hit you about it, storytelling wise?
Storytelling wise, I've gone on long enough with it, but it really, what sucked me in was originally was your marketing campaign. Definitely was early on in, you and I talking, and it was, what is this mystery? But then getting it in hand was just what was on the next page? What were you going to do next? Because
Mm-hmm.
as much as the opening pages are a surprise, and you get that shock value of, oh, this isn't just, a house style book, but it has like a house style story in an
Mm-hmm.
indie fashion. It keeps building through every page, especially when you move through the acts. It's just I really am impressed by this. And reading it again, it's sometimes fan oriented books don't have that polishedness to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a word, but but this one does and it doesn't. It's rough where it wants to be rough, but it's
Mm-hmm.
polished in the storytelling, and that's what I really appreciated.
Well, you have a keen eye, brother. No, I wanted to keep everything so that anybody else could do it. Like I used my credits, I used a tweet to convey credits and stuff like that. And eventually, when V2 hits, you'll see that everything on the page could be done with something that's in your phone. So I do like more of an aspect of a book that looks cobbled together in a sense. I think the inspiration for like every page being its own story, that came from me at the time exploring a lot of Renaissance art, where people often are in stained glass pictures, looking somewhere, pointing at something. Maybe something they're holding is symbolic. There's definitely a lot of symbolism in this book, and to enlighten, to kind of like illuminate certain characters. I'll give one tip, and this is not to be controversial, it's just how it is. I believe in the first chapter you run into kind of a mission guide that looks a lot like Lift Ticket, but of course his name is Hotspot. In his little boot is a piece of paper that says FE. It may be part of his belief system. I'm not going to illuminate what that means right now, but each character is constantly shifting their focus. I'll give one more tip. If you're a fan of mystery comics, like one thing that also the Black Book conveys that I had not seen too often was a visual mystery. I first saw it, I don't remember the Spider-Man book. He teams up with Nova. They're on the cover, like tied to an anchor being thrown overboard. And there's this villain called the Phantom, and he's like laughing at him. Good luck, Spidey. But that was a book that told you who the murderer was on the first page by the calendar pages that the person was touching. I think it was like January, August, September, October, November, and it spelled out Jason. I was like, oh, a comic book can tell you a secret. I wanted to keep it like the Black Book is a reference towards, obviously, it doesn't have to be the Bible, but a book that's maybe neglected, maybe esoteric. You're not sure like who's the writer half the time. Like you're getting the story from different perspectives, I guess.
Okay, and that makes sense because you don't use traditional word balloons. Um,
True.
there are there, but they're sparse. And I'm looking at one right now. It says "Still the Cynic," and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of floating in air underneath an eye. And it's assumed, at least when I read it, that it was the voice of the male antagonist,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also on the page with his female companion, and she could also be calling him that as well. It's very stream of thought on
You're
these
onto it,
pages.
brother. You're onto it.
Like you said, it can be read multiple times with different things coming out. And I'll make sure that as this is live, I will take excerpts from this and post them on there with your permission, of course. I don't want to give too much away, just so people could see what we're talking about. Because I can see the following page is you have, and I don't know if I want to call it an homage,
Mm-hmm.
but I also don't want to call it cliche, where you have 3 targeting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, and it's similar to that
Right.
New Mutants '98 cover. It evokes it, but it isn't a swipe at all by any means.
Mm.
So there's a lot of everything in these pages, and I appreciate the work that you definitely put into this.
Oh, cheers, brother. And no, it's definitely it was a time and place. I am working on new projects currently, but the Black Book will definitely be almost like a snapshot in a chapter where you've been on this journey too, brother. And I'll definitely tip my cap that you're not just a podcaster, you're not just a content creator. You're a friend. We've had conversations that have had weight. So you're privy to the Black Book. You've supported me along the way. So thank you, brother. Thank you. Not to kind of
Yeah.
misdirect our conversation or anything.
No, that's fine. Yeah, because really what got me on this journey in podcasting was partly our conversations. It was also conversations I've had with my other podcasting friends and bringing me along. But one of the biggest things that podcasting introduced me to was social media. And part of social media, especially on Twitter, which Twitter I think you and I can both agree, can be quite toxic at times, is the fact that you're in control of your Twitter feed. And I choose to have a Twitter feed that, while the drama does permeate, because everybody will, for lack of a better term, and I mean this in a broad generalization, echo chamber their beliefs. But the great thing about hobbies, and specifically the G.I. Joe community, is you can make an echo chamber for that fandom. So you can curate other friends, other accounts that really enjoy vintage toys or comic books, G.I. Joe. I'm sure there's a Hot Wheels Twitter group that is Twitter community that's probably off the charts. But Twitter,
The dark web, Hot Wheels.
Those treasure hunts, they exchange hands behind closed doors. But you're in control of that feed. You can have people that are positive and spread positivity in that feed. And of course, on occasion, they're going to say, why is this group, let's just go, it's the worst, the politics. You could say, I don't agree with the politics of this person, and why aren't we doing it more like this person? But when you control your feed, when you look at the people that are posting on your feed, you have the ability to say, you know what? I'm good with you because, well, I know where you stand on certain issues, but we're brothers, we're neighbors when it comes to celebrating our joy of G.I. Joe, Star Wars, and other, Marvel Legends, other action figure lines. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a huge movie community out on Twitter too. And they're the same way, especially the horror people. The horror people have the same level of enthusiasm and joy. And, while occasionally, like I said, you get a little bit, but you are what you cultivate, and you need to be active in that. Where I was going with that was, once I realized that, and it took me some time. Once I realized that, now you become a signal boost for all your friends, all the people that share that. And and that's what helps cultivate it.
Well, I will say that, again, like, nobody's out here teaching how to be good support groups, good network, but we have that baked in with G.I. Joe, and we have Larry Hama to credit for certain things like that. But no, I mean, there's always room to talk politics when you open the Black Book. I'll say that there was a little bit of a gunslinger time, for sure. And the culture war did slap us across the face a couple times. It did with the whole world. And I do think that there are allusions to that in the Black Book because it was written during that period. Well, just to kind of crack it open, the Black Book is a special mission. It's an off the books mission with two agents that you would probably see as expendable. And they have revolving allies, which is part of this whole experience. You're absolutely right. People don't need to see eye to eye to enjoy the same thing. We just happen to exist in this age where everything has had the volume turned up for various reasons, for sure.
Would you say this book is a chance to either open our eyes to other things or to be able to soak in just something and share that experience?
Well, at its best, it's written just like anything you should look at every 5-10 years, in the sense that the bottom layer probably is a symbolic blueprint. If you're reading it from the occult specialist perspective, then you're probably going to see a person who's playing catch up with what he's seeing, but also open to, he's curious. He's not cynical. And I think as far as like just the regular levels, it's a comic book from the outset, page one. It's a relationship. It's two people deciding to stick together in a mission, to break apart. So it's an interesting book. And I'll say this for one more. If you're an animal lover, if you're a reptile lover, the Black Book is a cinch. You're going to want that. One of the main characters is a reptile. And I will say this, that whatever character that reptile is on that page, that character is telling the truth. So that's one of the tips to the book is the reptile's always on the truth teller.
That's very interesting imagery because that's, if you want to talk about, we can go back to that very early book, the Bible.
Hey, there it is.
Usually the serpent is the one that lies. So that is a very interesting twist on that narrative because a traditional thought would be exactly the opposite.
It is. Well, history plays, you faded out for a minute there, Ironmonger / Gary. No, it's true that I didn't consider that just because I had my bearded dragon right in front of me. So I think it was one of those things like late in the book, something happens to the bearded dragon. And I won't tell you what it is, but it's a double entendre. So it's kind of one of those things where if you take a look at it from the reptile's perspective, he sees someone who's on a mission and he piggybacks it. And then he ends up taking the credit. So it's an interesting, each character has their own journey, be they a villain or not. And it's funny, you mentioned it's in the desert. Yeah, so I didn't have to draw any trees or anything. But I wanted to make sure each character could be viewed as the main character if you wanted them to be. You got to know everybody on the page.
I want to talk about one more thing about this book before we move on to onto maybe a little bit different topic. One, we talked a little bit about the Joe community, and you have friends of the Joe community and all over this book. There's HCC 788. He contributed a little sketch on a page. It's good to have him back now because he did take that time off. And the big one that I wanted to mention was John Royal. And
nice.
He is, from his work, he not only, as a freelancer doing a whole bunch of work for IDW and Zenoscope and Titan and just a bunch of different publishers, you were able to get him involved in this book. And what was that like?
Well, first of all, let me toot John Royal's horn for a second. He's an artist out of the UK. He's been doing G.I. Joe covers for quite a while now for IDW, as well as other books like you mentioned. I love his line art style. Through our social media, we promoted him quite a bit, as we do everybody. And I think as an artist, he was able to recognize that did help his sales quite a bit. So he offered that to me. He's like, can I draw you a picture? And I was like, well, would you mind if I put it in my comic book? So honestly, I can't say enough nice things. Totally humble guy. I've asked to interview him several times, but he's just one of those people that's on the page. He's old school. So much respect. And oh, dude, I love that he makes a cameo in the book. It's
Yeah,
incredible. Well, I will say this, that I believe IDW has some books where people they redid issue 21 where there's a different person on each page, which kind of causes you not to think about the story but more the artist, which is a fine choice to make. I wanted to kind of throw in random artists I think my chapters are 4 or 5 pages most of the time, because I wanted it to be like a new cover, a new reason to be excited about the chapter. So if and when, however wide the release, V2 will bring with it new artists on those in-between pages, and in some cases, pages that have been remastered or added details that I felt like I missed the first time around. So I'm a big proponent of definitely sharing people's work so they can get out there. But yeah, big ups to John Royal. Cheers, man.
indeed. So in preparing to have you on, on the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod, we do talk toys.
That's
And
right.
that's what brought you to the community and what brought me to the community and what led to our friendship,
Mm-hmm.
as it were. So one thing I've learned from you from your time on G.I. Joeberg was you are fascinated, infatuated with the Crimson Guard. And I made sure to surround myself with Crimson Guard figures and a few Crimson Guard vehicles.
Mm.
Um, Tell me a little bit about what draws you to the Crimson Guard. And please don't tell me it was Scoop.
That's hilarious. What's up, Rob? No, it's a great figure to pick, and of course the name's I'm gonna forget the name, but the line artist for the GI Joe card art,
Hector Garrido.
bingo. He was also an artist for but he
That's
did a lot
fine.
of work for the Catholic
Church.
church, and I want to say he was even close to like the Pope and stuff like that. Not by name, but definitely work that was commissioned by him and stuff. So I think in that artist, you have somebody that understands the language of symbolism, and that's portrayed on the Crimson Guard. So that's one of the card arts that's undeniable, because you have like feet and hands that are on backwards. You have it's rich with symbolism, as well as just the uniform. It represents so much. Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan. Big fan.
So one thing that that I was thinking about the Crimson Guard for this to talk to you. So one thing that I like about the Crimson Guard as portrayed mostly in the comic books, not so much in other media, the cartoons, but the Crimson Guard was essentially the undercover organization, the supreme loyalists of the Cobra terrorist organization. And the figures we get are a lot less boring than a guy in a polo shirt and khakis.
Yeah, yeah.
And they call this a ceremonial attire. And do you think that this attire, and we've, as a kid, playing with these, and these are toys, and these are action figures. Do you think that other than these guys are more than just once they've taken off their civilian clothes and they've put on their Crimson Guard uniform, do you think they've become more? Are they more than a sum of their parts, you would say? Does the uniform make the man, or?
They're dangerous because they're true believers. They're not Johnny Punch Clock. They're people that actually believe in what Cobra's doing. So I think when you're looking at a Crimson Guard, it doesn't matter who they are, because they're formidable. They're zealots in a sense, and they should be fascinating because they're one of those characters that teaches you. I mean, people say action figures, but aren't these just tactile kind of totems that that you obviously you can put in scenarios and act out, but you're looking at military medals. This guy is regal. There's stuff about him that speaks to international finance. As a little kid, you're like, oh, okay, I need to unpack this a little bit, or a lot of bit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, I can say as a kid, this wouldn't be something that I would be like running towards.
Mm-hmm.
Man of action, you say, that's Flint, that's Duke, that's, basically anybody that is a guy that, will jump out of
Yeah, yeah.
jump ahead of the group and say, follow me. And these guys are described as followers. And what you said is they're truly dangerous. And the file card, Cobra Commander, is known as the most dangerous man alive.
Hmm.
And would you say that these zealots would be almost more dangerous?
Well, in the comic, we do see them doing like the real emphatic salutes and the goose stepping. I could be overstating, but um, I don't know. That's always a tough question, and it's honestly one of the most interesting. I remember early on, I asked that same question on a pod or a similar one, that like what makes something so dangerous. But I think it all boils back to the fact that the file card, the comic portrayed these guys as they all looked the same. They were interchangeable. Like you could trade them out on somebody's family, and the wife wouldn't know. So it's pretty interesting a figure. And dude, like as we get close to the end of the Black Book chat, yeah, it's a credit to the brand that like that you and I as adults are talking about these things that we've had to unpack, and it's completely relevant. It's relevant today. You say Crimson Guard, like I play in a gymnasium that's run by the Red Shield. They both are allusions to the Rothschilds. The wealth. So it's interesting. Yeah, yeah. I guess in closing, if I may pose a Black Book question to you.
Absolutely.
Mm, I think we both know that like throughout the Black Book, the book that the characters look at might be the book you're looking at, in the sense that nobody can tell you what's on the pages. You see something, you see a character, you see a line. What did you see, my man, when you looked at the pages of the Black Book?
I see more the more I look at it, but it also raises more questions. It's probably exactly what you want to hear, but it's
Hmm.
for me, it was true. Um, it's just what I see in each page, like I said, is that stream of consciousness thought. It's that flowing of ideas, and the fact that, and you mentioned it earlier, is the changing narrator.
Mm,
So it means that you have to stop, take a breath. Where were we? Where are we going?
mhm,
And it's something that I like as I learn and appreciate just art in general. Comic books are an
mhm,
art form, and this book does things with a similar setting, something I'm familiar with, war comics, G.I. Joe,
mhm,
some fantastical elements, but it puts a unique spin on it that's very indie, but not being, some indie books can be very out there, but this one keeps its feet on the ground while being different.
hmm.
If it's really hard to explain, because it is something different, and that I really did appreciate more on a reread than I did when I read this. I want to say probably last time was about 2-3 years ago
Hmm.
when I initially got it from you.
Well, first of all, thank you, brother, for taking the time to soak up the pages and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Because I mean, like it is one of those things where if there's any indie creators listener out there, you can plug a project for years and it might not hit, but it will hit. And I do think that like the Black Book is one of those things that will find a wide release. So if you're listening to this pod Well, get the motor pod is on the pages of the Black Book V2. So it is a community effort. You know, we are creating the culture and the conversation around it. It's one of those things where I myself can see myself as different characters. And you're right to say that it's a book with its head in the clouds, but its feet on the ground, because I didn't want to use the best GI Joes. I wanted to use GI Joes that, you know, people don't see a lot of, and everything in the book is from GI Joe, including the supernatural subplot that kind of evolves. That's directly from Skeletons in the Closet, which is one of my favorite episodes of the cartoon. So it's definitely a Joe book that, if you, dear listener, are catching this in post, oh yeah, run it down. The most digestible. My elevator pitch is it's the X-Files meets G.I. Joe, and it will not disappoint. Nobody can tell you what's on the pages of the Black Book, but you'll soon know.
So before I close out, Cujo,
yes, sir.
You know, give out your socials where people can find you. You know, because I know you have a YouTube channel, and I know, you know, you're active.
You got it.
On Twitter on a bunch. So,
oh, my signal's definitely scattered, but if you're on Twitter, by all means, run me down. At 86 Cujo, like the rabbit dog, and YouTube is codename Cujo, little purple avatar that you might be looking at now. And I do roll with G.I. Joeberg. You might know them as an international toy pod, but oh, so much more. And the G.I. Joe community, definitely I roll deep with. So yeah, it's, you say honor, I say honor, brother. It's an honor to be on your pod, to know that, like, we turn up our signals even though people don't pay us and stuff like that. We are truly indies. So it's a pleasure to collaborate with you, my man.
Trust me, the pleasure is all mine, as cliche as that sounds. And with that, I'll close out. And thank you for listening. This has been the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod. For more discussion, you can follow me on social media at Chaplain Joe Pod on Twitter, Instagram, or even Facebook. And you can even send an old-fashioned email, chaplainjoepod@gmail.com. The Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod is the strange, but not as strange, nerdy little brother of The Pint, a pop culture podcast. And you can even follow them on social media as well. Just search for The Pint, a pop culture podcast. And with that all out of the way, to close out this missal, I have one final missal for the masses. Be decent to each other.
The final two words, till next time.